Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on Skyrim's most evil characters. First up is Grelid the Kind. Grelid the Kind runs Honor Hall Orphanage in Riften, where she is responsible for the care, feeding, and general well-being of approximately 4 to 6 children at any given time. The title The Kind is bestowed upon her by the children themselves, which should immediately tell you everything you need to know about her tenure as Riften's premier childcare professional. She calls them miserable little wretches, locks them in rooms for discipline, and has cultivated an atmosphere of such profound terror that multiple orphans have publicly testified to her systematic abuse. When you first encounter her, she's in the middle of a motivational speech that includes the line, "Those who shirk their duties will get an extra beating." Do I make myself clear? So, standard orphanage management techniques. Now, the truly remarkable thing about Grelid is that she represents your tutorial villain for the Dark Brotherhood questline. Aventus Aretino, a child who escaped her orphanage, performs the Black Sacrament to summon the Dark Brotherhood, specifically to murder this woman. A child conducted a dark ritual to hire assassins to kill his orphanage director, and the game presents this as completely reasonable. In fact, if you complete this contract, the children literally cheer and celebrate when they learn she's dead. The game rewards you with gold, Dark Brotherhood progression, and the eternal gratitude of traumatized orphans. Truly, the moral complexity Skyrim is known for. But here's my favorite part. You don't actually need to join the Dark Brotherhood to kill her. You can walk into Honor Hall Orphanage at any point, murder an elderly woman in front of children, and face zero consequences. No bounty, no guards, no moral judgment from the game whatsoever. Constance Mitchell, her assistant, essentially says, well, that was bound to happen eventually, and takes over operations. The city of Riften collectively shrugs. Even the most morally righteous players who refuse the Dark Brotherhood will often kill Grelid anyway, because the game has made it abundantly clear that this woman's continued existence is an act of harm to society. So, congratulations. Your first entry on Skyrim's most evil characters is an 80-year-old woman whose greatest accomplishment is making child abuse so cartoonishly obvious that literally everyone agrees she deserves death. Truly inspiring stuff. Next up is Mercer Frey. Mercer Frey serves as Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild in Riften, a position he acquired 25 years prior to your arrival by murdering the previous Guildmaster, Gallus, who was also his close friend and fellow member of the Nightingales. He then stole the skeleton key from the Twilight Sepulchre, a sacred artifact belonging to the Daedric Prince Nocturnal, and framed Carlia for Gallus's murder. For the next 2.5 decades, Mercer systematically embezzled from the Guild's coffers while using the skeleton key's power to unlock literally anything, all while the Guild experienced what members attributed to bad luck, which is a very charitable way of describing your Guildmaster, stealing everything that isn't nailed down and betraying a Daedric prince's trust. The skeleton key, for those unfamiliar, is an artifact that opens any lock, metaphorical or otherwise. It's also the source of Nocturnal's influence over the Thieves Guild, and removing it from the Sepulchre is what caused the Guild's fortune to collapse. So the Guild's decades-long decline, the failed heists, the dwindling membership, the loss of influence across Skyrim, all of that was directly caused by Mercer's theft. The man created a self-perpetuating cycle where he stole from the Guild got poorer, and he blamed it on bad luck while continuing to steal. Extraordinary detective work from everyone involved, truly. Now, you might think this betrayal would be difficult to spot, but Mercer's house, Riftweald Manor, is booby-trapped to hell and back. He's constantly dismissive of Guild operations, and he shows zero interest in actually restoring the Guild's fortune. The man is practically wearing a sign that says, "I'm embezzling." But nobody notices until Carlia shows up with Gallus's journal and explicitly tells you about the betrayal, at which point you travel to the Dwemer ruins of Irkungthand, where Mercer is translating Gallus's journal to find Snow Vale Sanctum's treasure, and he attempts to murder you by collapsing the ruin. He fails, obviously, because his entire evil plan is just steal things and retire wealthy. Groundbreaking stuff. The best part, he stole from thieves. His entire career as a master criminal involves stealing from the people most likely to notice things are missing and most capable of tracking him down. And he thought he'd get away with it because he blamed everything on bad luck. The Guild's bad luck was just embezzlement. This is your second most evil character in Skyrim, a middle manager who committed murder for a promotion and then spent 25 years doing fantasy white-collar crime. Truly the height of villainy. Moving on to Cicero. Cicero serves as the Keeper of the Night Mother for the Dark Brotherhood, a position he has held since the destruction of the Cheydinhal Sanctuary in Cyrodiil. His duties include transporting the Night Mother's corpse across Tamriel, maintaining Dark Brotherhood traditions, and adhering to the 5 tenets with absolute religious devotion. He is also completely insane, which is the natural result of spending years in isolation with a corpse while watching your entire organization collapse around you. His 5 journals document his gradual descent into madness as he travels from Cyrodiil to Skyrim, watching sanctuaries fall and brothers die, all while desperately trying to preserve the old ways. It's actually remarkably tragic if you bother to read them, which you didn't. Now, the game presents Cicero as the villain of the Dark Brotherhood questline, He murders an innkeeper's daughter at Loria's farm when his wagon breaks down. He constantly quotes jester rhymes and speaks in third person, which everyone finds deeply irritating. And when the Night Mother chooses you as her listener instead of Astrid, Cicero attacks Arnbjorn and Vaisara before fleeing to the Dawnstar Sanctuary, at which point Astrid sends you to kill him, and most players enthusiastically agree because his voice is annoying. Truly the pinnacle of moral reasoning. But here's the thing, Cicero is the only person in the entire Skyrim Dark Brotherhood actually following the rules. He's the only one who respects the old ways, the only one who maintains the 5 tenets, and the only one who recognizes the Night Mother's authority. Astrid has spent years ignoring tradition, rejecting contracts from the Night Mother, and running the Brotherhood like a personal murder business. When Cicero attempts to murder Astrid, he's technically enforcing Tenet 4, never dishonor the Night Mother. Astrid has been dishonoring the Night Mother for years, so from Cicero's perspective, he's performing his religious duty. And then Astrid betrays you to the Penitus Oculatus, gets the entire sanctuary destroyed, and gets most of the Brotherhood killed. But sure, Cicero's the bad guy, the jester who followed the rules versus the guildmaster who abandoned tradition and sold you out to Imperial agents. Congratulations, you probably killed the one person who was actually loyal to the Dark Brotherhood's core principles because you found his voice irritating. Extraordinary judgment. If you spare Cicero, he becomes a follower and remains completely devoted to you as listener. If you kill him, Astrid's betrayal happens anyway and you lose a loyal servant. His greatest crime is being annoying to listen to, which apparently ranks higher than mass murder in most players' moral calculus. Next up is Astrid. Astrid leads the Dark Brotherhood's Skyrim Sanctuary, a position she's held for years after systematically abandoning the old ways and rejecting the Night Mother's authority. Her leadership philosophy can be summarized as contracts come from me, not some corpse, which is a bold stance for someone running an organization literally founded on serving the Night Mother. But Astrid prefers control over tradition, power over purpose, and manipulation over faith, which works fine until the Night Mother chooses someone else as listener, and Astrid's ego can't handle it. Your introduction to Astrid is her kidnapping you while you sleep, dragging you to an abandoned shack, and forcing you to murder one of 3 captives to prove your loyalty. One is a mercenary, one is a fake emperor, and one is a lying wife. You have no context, no investigation, and no choice. Kill someone or remain trapped. This is your tutorial for the Dark Brotherhood questline. Random murder to demonstrate you're willing to follow orders. Truly, the foundation of a healthy professional relationship. Once you join the Brotherhood, Astrid assigns contracts, maintains control, and everything runs smoothly until the Night Mother speaks to you directly and names you listener, at which point Astrid's jealousy consumes her entirely. The corpse she's been ignoring for years suddenly has opinions, and those opinions involve you instead of her. So Astrid makes the rational decision to betray you to Commander Morrow of the Penitus Oculatus, who attacks the sanctuary and massacres everyone inside. Festus Crex, dead. Gabriella, dead. Lys, dead. Vaisara barely survives. Arnbjorn, her own husband, dies from his injuries later. The entire Skyrim Brotherhood is destroyed because Astrid couldn't handle not being in charge. But here's where it gets truly special. When you find Astrid in the burning sanctuary, she's performed the Black Sacrament on herself. She's hired the Dark Brotherhood to kill her. Her final act, her redemption, is creating a contract that forces you to follow her orders one last time. Even in death, she's manipulating you. Even in penance, she's maintaining control. She destroyed the organization, got everyone killed, and her solution is making you kill her, while she gets to play martyr. Congratulations, you followed a leader whose ego was so fragile that she sold out an entire assassin organization to Imperial agents because a corpse liked you better. Thanks for destroying our entire organization because you had ego issues, Astrid. Truly masterful leadership. Moving on to Ancano. Ancano serves as a Thalmor advisor to Archmage Arn at the College of Winterhold, a position he acquired through diplomatic pressure from the Aldmeri Dominion. His official role is cultural liaison and magical research consultant. His actual role is Thalmor operative embedded in Skyrim's premier magical institution to monitor their activities and steal anything useful for Thalmor supremacist goals. This is immediately obvious to everyone at the college, including Mirabelle Irvine, who suspects him from day one, and you, who can identify suspicious elves wearing Thalmor robes. But the college hosts him anyway because apparently academic institutions have no concept of operational security. Now, when the Eye of Magnus is discovered in Sarthal, Ancano takes a very keen interest in this unknown artifact of immense magical power. He positions himself near it, studies it constantly, and makes no secret of his obsession. The college responds to this incredibly suspicious behavior by letting him wander around unsupervised in the Hall of Elements, with unrestricted access to a potentially world-ending magical artifact. Mirabelle expresses concern, Aaron dismisses it, and then you leave for one quest to find the Staff of Magnus, during which time Ancano murders Archmage Aaron, takes over the college, and begins using the Eye to unmake the world. His words, not mine. The Eye of Magnus creates a massive magical barrier around Ancano that makes him invulnerable to conventional attacks. He stands in the Hall of Elements channeling power from the Eye, while college members are thrown back by magical force. He explicitly states his intention to use the eye for the Thalmor, which in context means either destroying the world or achieving Thalmor domination over Tamriel. The Thalmor's ultimate goal, according to their ideology, is the extinction of humanity and the unmaking of Mundus to return to their previous divine state. So Ancano's plan involves genocide at minimum and cosmic destruction at maximum. You stop him by using the Staff of Magnus to disrupt the eye's power, at which point he becomes vulnerable, and you kill him in the Hall of Elements. The entire crisis took approximately 30 seconds of him being unsupervised to initiate. The College of Winterhold, Skyrim's center of magical learning and research, was nearly used to end reality because they trusted a Thalmor agent who explicitly worked for a supremacist organization. Extraordinary judgment from everyone involved. But here's what elevates Ancano above the previous entries. He's not motivated by personal greed like Mercer, religious devotion like Cicero, or ego like Astrid. He's motivated by genocidal ideology. His success would mean the end of reality as it exists, the destruction or domination of all human life, and the fulfillment of Thalmor's supremacist goals. He represents institutional evil, not personal evil. And he came remarkably close to succeeding because an archmage ignored every red flag imaginable. Wow, the Thalmor agent turned out to be evil. Shocking. Next up is Potema, the Wolf Queen. Potema Septim, known as the Wolf Queen of Solitude, was a necromancer, queen, an all-around menace to society who lived from 3E82 to 3E137. She was the daughter of Emperor Pelagius II, married King Mantiarco of Solitude, and spent her entire life murdering her way to power through a combination of political maneuvering, dark magic, and raising armies of undead. Her greatest accomplishment was starting the War of Red Diamond, a massive civil war that lasted from 3E120 to 3E127 and killed thousands of people across Tamriel. She supported her son Uriel III's claim to the throne by raising literal armies of the dead to fight against her political rivals, because apparently conventional warfare wasn't dramatic enough. The war ended when Uriel III was killed and Potema was besieged in her castle in Solitude, where she died at age 55 in 3E137. And that should have been the end of it. A normal evil queen dies, gets buried, and causes no further problems. But Potema was so committed to being a problem that her spirit remained active in her catacombs beneath the Temple of Divines in Solitude, waiting for an opportunity to return, which happens in 4E201, approximately 200 years after her death, making her Skyrim's most persistent problem. In the quest The Wolf Queen Awakened, you discover that Potema's spirit has been raising an undead army in the catacombs beneath Solitude's Temple of Divines. Draugr and undead servants are terrorizing the city, and Jarl Elisif, current ruler of Solitude, sends you to deal with it. Not the city guard, not a squad of trained soldiers. You, the random adventurer who happened to be nearby. The undead queen in the basement? Yeah, we've been meaning to do something about that. Truly proactive leadership. You descend into Potema's sanctum, fight through her undead army, and confront her spirit as she attempts to fully manifest and reclaim Solitude. She explicitly states her intention to rule again, which would involve conquering the city with necromancy and presumably starting another civil war. You defeat her, absorb her power, and prevent Solitude from falling to an undead necromancer queen who's been dead for 2 centuries. The Dragonborn absorbing her essence is the only thing that finally puts an end to her evil, because even death couldn't stop her the first time. What elevates Potema above previous entries is the combination of scale, persistence, and complete absence of redemption. She started a war that killed thousands. She corrupted her own son into tyranny. She ruled through fear and necromancy. And she was so thoroughly evil that her spirit remained dangerous for 200 years after her death. Most villains have the decency to stay dead. Potema decided that mortality was just a minor setback and continued causing problems across centuries. Her entire existence, living and dead, is dedicated to conquest and suffering. Literally too evil to stay dead. Moving on to Miraak. Miraak holds the distinction of being the first Dragonborn, which sounds impressive until you realize it means first one to betray absolutely everyone. During the Merethic era, Miraak served as a dragon priest under the Dragon Masters during their rule over humanity. He then learned the Bend Will shout from Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Forbidden Knowledge, and used it to betray his Dragon Masters during the Dragon War. The humans celebrated him as a liberator, so naturally, Miraak turned on them as well, and attempted to conquer Solstheim for himself, because loyalty is for people without ambition. He was eventually defeated by Vavlok the Jailer and banished to Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm of oblivion, where he spent thousands of years reading and planning his return. Fast forward to 4E201, and Miraak is still in Apocrypha, still planning, and finally ready to escape. His method, mind control the entire population of Solstheim through the Allmaker Stones, forcing them into trance states where they build shrines to him and chant his name. Farmers, merchants, workers, everyone on the island is enslaved to construct monuments to Miraak's ego while he prepares his return. It's mass mind control on an island-wide scale, which is notably more ambitious than Grelad locking children in rooms. But here's where Miraak really distinguishes himself. When you start killing dragons in Skyrim, Miraak steals the dragon souls before you can absorb them. You defeat a dragon, prepare to absorb its soul, and Mirak appears as a ghostly projection to steal it from you like a schoolyard bully. He does this repeatedly throughout the Dragonborn DLC, each time mocking you about how you're feeding his power. The first Dragonborn, ladies and gentlemen, reduced to soul-stealing petty theft because he's been trapped in a library for thousands of years. You eventually travel to Apocrypha to confront him at the summit of Apocrypha, where he fights you alongside his 3 dragon servants, Relanikiv, Kruziakrel, and Sarotar. You use Bend Will to turn Sarotar against him, defeat him in combat, and then Hermaeus Mora kills him with tentacles and makes you his new champion. Mirak's final words are a plea to Mora for mercy, which he doesn't receive. The Daedric prince he served for thousands of years dumps him immediately for a better Dragonborn. Thanks for the build-up, got killed in your own library. What makes Mirak more evil than Potema is the combination of multiple betrayals, complete megalomania, and viewing all mortal life as disposable. He betrayed the dragons, betrayed humanity, served a Daedric prince for forbidden knowledge, and spent thousands of years planning conquest. His loyalty exists only to himself. His goals involve nothing less than conquering Tamriel, and his method is mass enslavement of an entire population. Plus he steals your dragon souls, which is just rude. But as evil as Mirak is, he's not the most evil character in Skyrim. That honor belongs to Harkon. Lord Harkon rules the Volkihar vampire clan from Castle Volkihar in the Sea of Ghosts, a position he's held for centuries after making a pact with Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination and creator of vampirism. The terms of this pact were simple. Harkon sacrificed thousands of innocents to Molag Bal in a ritual of extreme depravity in Cold Harbor, and in return, he and his family became pure-blooded vampire lords. The exact nature of Molag Bal's ritual is left somewhat vague in the lore, but given that Molag Bal is the Daedric prince of rape and brutality, you can assume it involved acts that make everything else on this list look pleasant. Harkon committed these acts willingly, sacrificed thousands of people, and turned his wife Valerica and daughter Serana into vampires, apparently without full consent from either of them. Now, most vampire lords would be satisfied with immortality, supernatural power, and ruling a clan of undead predators. But Harkon has bigger ambitions. He's obsessed with the tyranny of the sun prophecy, which states that a pure-blooded vampire can use Oriel's bow to blot out the sun permanently. This would allow vampires to walk freely at all times and make Tamriel into a vampire paradise. It would also devastate the ecosystem, destroy agriculture, kill most plant life, and likely cause mass extinction of mortal life across the continent. But Harkon views this as a minor inconvenience compared to vampire convenience. The prophecy requires an Elder Scroll and Serana, his daughter, who was involved in the original ritual. Unfortunately for Harkon, Valerica discovered his plans, fled to the Soul Cairn with the Elder Scroll, and sealed herself there to prevent him from completing the prophecy. His wife literally chose eternal imprisonment in a realm of soul-devouring demons over staying married to him. Serana was sealed in Dim Hollow Crypt for centuries to keep her away from her father. When you release her and return her to Castle Volkihar, Harkon's response is to demand the Elder Scroll and show zero concern for his daughter's well-being after centuries of imprisonment. Dad of the Year nominee right here. Throughout the Dawnguard questline, Harkon hunts his own daughter, attacks the Dawnguard, and shows complete disregard for anyone's life except his own. If you side with the Volkihar clan, he turns you into a vampire lord and uses you to hunt down the Elder Scrolls and Oriel's bow. If you side with the Dawnguard, he becomes your primary antagonist. Either way, Serana sides against him, because even his own daughter recognizes he's irredeemable. You eventually confront him in the Cathedral of Castle Volkihar, where he attempts to complete the tyranny of the sun. You kill him, Serana mourns despite everything, and Tamriel is saved from permanent darkness. What makes Harkon the most evil character in Skyrim is the combination of scale and personal cruelty. He has the highest confirmed death toll of anyone on this list, thousands sacrificed to Molag Bal. He participated in Molag Bal's ritual, which involves depravity beyond what most mortals can comprehend. He abused his own family for power. He ruled through vampire predation for centuries, and his ultimate goal would devastate all life on Tamriel for vampire convenience. He's Ankano's genocidal ambition, plus Astrid's betrayal of people who trust him, plus Potema's necromantic persistence, plus Mirak's megalomania, all wrapped into one vampire lord who's also the worst father in Skyrim. Truly, the complete package. In conclusion, Skyrim's most evil characters range from child abusers to vampire lords attempting ecological catastrophe, and you should absolutely play them. If you enjoyed this PowerPoint presentation, I made others, and you should absolutely check them out. Peace on planet Earth.